Sorry to break the news to you folks, but summer vacation is almost over, and that means we are going to see a big transition really for everyone in the family. And that is where we start our conversation on this Hear Me, See Me podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Hear Me, See Me is a mental health awareness initiative spearheaded here at our WIBW TV headquarters in Topeka, Kansas. And with us today, we have Jennie Watson. She is Manager of Community-Based Program Services at Astra Mental Health and Recovery. They are our partners and sponsors for the Hear Me, See Me initiative this year. Jennie, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, happy to be here.
Well, can you believe summer vacation's over? We just started.
It goes really, really fast.
Yes, especially in Kansas, because folks, if you're watching from outside Kansas, most Kansas schools start up here the second week of August already.
Yeah.
So it is just around the corner.
Yeah.
How big a deal is this for everyone in the family?
It's huge for everyone in the family. It's a very large adjustment. You know, we really look forward to that last day of school when you can put the books away, put the book bags away, and start to kind of really live that kind of carefree, less scheduled, I won't say not scheduled, but less scheduled summer life with, you know, the later nights, the later mornings, and just the more carefree time. And now it's time to kind of switch that back to the much more scheduled, much more structured time of year.
And now we have rules.
There's a lot of rules.
A lot of rules.
Yes.
So let's focus on the kids, first of all,
Absolutely.
with this conversation. When we talk about the kids, and maybe this answer is different depending on if they're elementary age, middle school age, or teenage, high school, but what does it seem like is the biggest adjustment for the kids?
For the kids, and it does vary between different age ranges and things, but for the kids, it's mostly the structure piece. The having to get up earlier for a lot of them, having to get up earlier in the morning and be functioning to
Yes.
sit in a classroom and be able to learn for the course of the day and to follow that more rigid structure that is required of the school setting to be able to provide the environment they need to provide for our kids to be able to learn. So it's that change in structure, having to, like I said, wake up earlier. And for a lot of our kids, they've been playing and staying up late and on their screens and doing those kinds of things. And it's just kind of time to start making some adjustments.
So for that part of it, the sleep part of it, first of all, how vital is sleep for those developing kids?
I mean, it's huge. One of the first things, you know, when we're talking with parents and kids that are coming in for services, you know, things we look at as kind of foundational is how they're doing with their sleep habits, how they're doing with their nutrition habits, because those two things have to be in place and have to be solid for the rest of the body and the brain to work in its best capacity.
So that kind of has a ripple effect, right?
Absolutely.
If they're not rested, they're not going to pay attention, they're not going to focus.
They can't. There's parts of their brains that aren't going to work at their optimum levels if they're tired. The messages don't send in the way that they need to send for them to be able to function. And so you see behaviors. You see the inattention. Sometimes you'll see the escalated behaviors, the tantrums in younger kids because they just can't. And so being able to make sure people are well rested, and this doesn't happen with one good night's sleep. This happens with several. So if, you know, that's kind of one of those messages to the kids and the parents out there. If we haven't started trying to get back on some sort of good sleep hygiene routine, that's something that I would recommend we start as soon as possible.
I was going to say, that was going to be my next question, is what
Yeah.
can we do now to ease the sleep and the rest
Yes.
portion of this transitional period?
Absolutely. It's to try to get back to those school year schedules. And it's not fun. You know, it's still daylight outside. There's still fun to be had. But, you know, getting off of our screens at least 30 minutes before bedtime. I would suggest longer if we could, because our brains can't rest in the way they need to when we're engaged in either scrolling on our phones, scrolling on our iPads, or even just watching TV. Trying to get back to regular bedtimes and also wake up times so that they can start practicing that routine of getting up, getting ready, not being rushed, and have all of their things that they need to have a successful day. And the sooner we can start practicing that, I know it sounds silly, but we want to practice that so that it's not as stressful come day one of school.
Well, related to adults, I mean, even for adults, when we take the weekend, just 2 days that we sleep in, and everybody thought we talk about the Mondays, right?
Yes.
I mean, part of
Yes.
that is sleep and rest.
Yes.
Suddenly we're having to get up early after being awake a long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our brains are more developed than that of the children, and we still need our rest too. So this works for parents as well. And I always encourage parents as much as they can to be up and ready before their kids so that they can help them get through the steps of the things they need to do to get ready for school, especially depending on the age of your child.
Okay, so that's the rest and the sleep and establishing that routine. For elementary school students in particular, this might be more of an issue. So what happens when a child is going to school for the first time, whether that be kindergarten or first grade?
Sure.
That's a huge step.
Absolutely.
So what are the things that we're looking for in kids with that transition time?
They are going to be feeling a lot of big feelings, and it could be a mix of things. You know, they could be very excited, very happy. They could be feeling a little nervous or scared. And I think it's important to remember that they also might be feeling all of those at the same time. Parents, whether it's in this setting or others, you know, they really set the tone for how the kids are going to respond. You know, if a kid falls down and gets hurt, they always look to the adults sometimes first of like, am I okay? You know, and that am I okay reflection of kids to their parents happens throughout their entire childhood. So as long, you know, when we as the parents are able to kind of give them that reassurance that this is going to be good, that helps a lot. I think also kind of doing what we can to familiarize ourselves with the school and the school personnel. You know, if your school has a back to school night or a meet the teachers night or an open house of some sort, try to go. And if you can't go because scheduling doesn't allow it, you have to work, whatever the case might be, I would strongly encourage reaching out to the school to see if you can schedule something else that fits your time frame better. If you're able to walk through that school with your kid and they see the hallways, they know where the bathrooms are, they know where they're supposed to be, maybe they see their cubby or their place setting on the carpet, meet their teachers, all of that stuff makes a huge difference in helping them to feel more secure in that transition. Also, I would add the attachment piece to remind kids that while it might feel like a really long time, because their sense of time is very different than ours, helping them to understand that this isn't forever, this is just for a little bit of our day. Sometimes they'll take like an attachment item, like a washcloth or something that maybe has got a little spray of mom's perfume or dad's cologne, something that has that smell of mom or dad, that's a safety or security item that's not going to be like super disruptive. It's not a toy, it's not a something
Should you
that's going to
talk
make
that
noise.
through with the teacher? Because I could see a teacher going, put that away.
Absolutely. Anything you can do to just help ease that transition. The better you get to know your kids as teachers, the more successful the year is going to be, because they're going to feel more open and comfortable talking with you if they have concerns or if they see something in there with the kids that's distressing, and you'll feel more comfortable and confident in talking with them if you have questions or concerns. So absolutely, running that by the teachers. There's absolutely, we can do that. Sometimes I've talked to parents about like drawing a little picture on the inside of their hand, or just something that's not disruptive but gives them a little reminder that like, hey, mom's still here, dad's still here,
a little extra security,
and we're going to see you later.
Is it okay to give them something to look forward to at the end of the day, or is that more like bribing and maybe not the best habit to get into?
That's tricky. It depends on what it is.
Okay.
Because you do run a risk of then there becoming this cause and effect of, because I did this, this happens next. You know, we know that if they learn that it can become a pattern, depends on what the thing is. You know, if it is we walk home together and on our walk we can pick some flowers or something of that nature, absolutely, because that's a connection thing, that's reestablishing that connection. I would discourage doing a lot of maybe daily things that are going to become monetary, because then we are highly motivated by those external factors, but creating like like an incentive sheet where they can earn based on having
Good idea.
good transitions with like a sticker chart or something for those younger kids. That can be very motivating.
How else, too, should we be mindful of, and to what extent should we expect that those first couple weeks we may see some problems? We might see the grumpiness, we might see the XYZ, and maybe not be making those plans for activities and events, especially on the weekend. Because I've heard that happen too, that, you know what, it's with this change, kids are going to be exhausted those first couple weeks. And so maybe don't make these huge plans for the weekends, those first few weeks of school.
Absolutely. I would expect there to be big feelings when they come home.
I like that, big feelings.
Big feelings. Because they've been potentially kind of just holding that in all day. You know, they get home and now it's like time for that to come out. So I would expect there to be, especially in the first couple of weeks, some just of that. And they're also going to be very tired, because even with good sleep, a full day at school with playing, meeting new friends, learning and being active and doing stuff is going to feel different than what a full day at home is going to feel like. So having the ability to absorb that and know that it's not going to last forever, allowing some more downtime, and not feeling that external pressure to just kind of go is very important.
What are some signs that maybe the transition isn't going so well? And what should we be watching for, and how do we handle those? Like, for example, I had a nephew who, when he started school, wouldn't eat. Like, they had trouble getting him to eat, and it was because of this transition where he'd been used to being home and then suddenly was in a different environment away from those things, like you said, that bring comfort and security.
I would look for, parents tend to know their children best. So you're looking for major kind of behavior changes. If they're a little tired or a little grumpy and they can kind of bounce back, that's to be expected. If you're giving them all their normal comfort items and it's not helping, you're allowing more downtime and they're still not kind of bouncing back, and it's been more than 2 weeks, we would expect things to kind of start to level back out after the first 2 weeks of school. So if they haven't started to do that, I would start to maybe really start having those conversations with the school a little closer around, is there anything that you guys are noticing? Here's what I'm seeing, and we're working to start building that partnership of communication with the school. Not eating is certainly one of them. Disrupted sleep is one of them. Not wanting to go to school would be expected a little bit, because sometimes there's something there that's upsetting them, and it could be something as simple as somebody took their toy and that made them sad or mad. Trying to create a space for dialogue with your child about how things are going. And sometimes we pressure. We'll ask as soon as they get in the car or as soon as they get home, how was your day? Because we are so excited and hopeful that it went well. And one of the things I encourage parents to kind of reframe their questions to is, tell me something good that happened today. Not how was your day, because eventually we're going to get the answer of good, fine,
fine,
what,
yep.
Meh. So asking it in a different way. What was something you felt proud of today? What was something good that happened today? Who was a friend you played with today? Because then you're getting you might still get good, and it offers opportunities to give a different kind of answer and for them to think about their day in a different kind of way.
That's great advice. I like it. Okay, the transition to middle school.
Yes.
So is it a lot of the same as elementary school, but now we're throwing into people are going to a new building, maybe new friend groups. Now you've got bodies changing and hormones in the mix. What's that transition to middle school like? Is there any way to prepare for that?
Right. Yes, it's a lot of the same. Middle school aged children are in that transition with, like you said, their bodies are starting to change, their hormones are starting to change, they're getting exposed to more and more things at younger and younger ages that kind of forces them to grow up in ways that their brain development just might not be ready for. And there's also sometimes a part of them that kind of craves that little kid life still. So they're kind of stuck between two worlds. And we as the parents have to really, really lock in on not taking it personally. because we oftentimes become the target of those big feelings. And those feelings get a lot bigger, but we have to make sure that we set realistic expectations and boundaries and maintain them. And I would also, this is not a popular idea. It's not one that goes over real well with any group of people, but doing what we can to help them reduce the screen time and the time spent on different social media apps and things of that nature as they're getting ready to transition into school, especially with how some of the rules and laws are changing.
Absolutely. But when we what are some alternatives? How do you convince kids to put down the phone? I mean, we want to respect boundaries, but should we be taking the phone, like physically taking the phone away every once in a while, or looking at the phone? How do you even do that?
I think that, well, we know that people can get themselves into situations where they just don't really realize what they've gotten themselves into, so to speak. Stuff appears safe. I think parental supervision and monitoring is really important. Do you physically take the phone? I would say no, but also it depends on each kid and what the circumstances are. You know, there's so many parental controls we can do. We can lock that thing down so it's no more than a paperweight if we know how to, you know, through the parent's phone and things of that nature. So you can control, it's better to control it that way than to physically take it, because that could lead to bigger conflicts that we just don't need to have.
Are there any signs that something might be going on social media? Because I feel like middle school seems like that age where you really first start hearing about this, you know, as kids start developing cliques, and then you hear about the bullying and things like that. Anything that we could maybe either be watching for as signs in the kids, or perhaps asking questions about, so that we know if there's any of this? Because you used to be, you know, bullying was bell to bell. You went home, you could escape it. Now it's in the palm of their hands 24/7.
Right, which is part of why I encourage limitations on it, so that, because we can get sucked into that very easily, even us as adults, and no good comes from sometimes just reading and looking at stuff that is harmful or negative. And so being able to disengage from that is important. The things to look for, it's interesting because of course there's signs and symptoms and things to watch for, but there's no way to know that it's specifically tied to too much screen time or bullying or any one particular thing that's going wrong or bad in our middle school aged kids' life. And to expect us to get a firm, clear answer the first time we ask is probably not super realistic. So I always encourage parents, caregivers to keep that door open. You know, if you're noticing, and it's hard to tell sometimes, are we grumpy and you know, rolling our eyes, stomping our feet, slamming doors because something bad is happening, or because we're just really irritated, you know, with our parents right now? It could be both or neither. So asking the questions, are you okay? Is there anything, and we're gonna get a lot of those eye rolls, stomping feet, slamming doors, and it's still important to ask the question. You know, reminding our kids, like, you can tell me if something's going wrong. There's a difference between, hey, something's going sideways and I need to talk to you about it, but I'm scared to get in trouble, versus us finding out about it later and now you've been keeping secrets.
What's funny, not funny, but interesting is I sat in and moderated part of a violence prevention seminar one time, and there was a teen portion of it. And one of the teenagers said, keep asking the questions.
Absolutely.
Because we may act like we don't want you to ask the questions, but we really want you to keep asking the questions.
Absolutely.
Which was interesting to get that perspective from a teenager.
Absolutely. We have a group of youth that come together from the different school districts, and we talk with them about what's it like to be in the school, things like that, and we hear the same thing from them of, it's annoying and we're going to act like we don't like it, but yes, give us rules, give us boundaries, and keep asking questions. You know, we want to be seen. We want to know that you're there, and then when we're ready, we'll bring it to you. But we just have to know that door's open and kind of test the waters every once in a while. I know we as adults often get very busy. You know, we're thinking about what's for dinner, or did we make it to the store? Do we have this thing done or that thing done? And so sometimes we can, no shame, blame, or judgment, but we can miss what our kids are trying to tell us because we're busy.
Absolutely.
And so we have to make sure that when they're ready to tell us something, we stop what we're doing as best we can to lock in and be ready to hear it.
So much good advice already, but I want to touch on the high school transition and also parents. You've mentioned parents several times,
Yes.
so we're going to get to that part of the conversation in just a moment. Welcome back into the Hear Me, See Me podcast, where we are talking about those back to school transitions with Jennie Watson from Astra Mental Health and Recovery. This is so fascinating. We've talked about elementary school and middle school. High school's a big one, though.
Yeah.
What's different about when the kids go off to high school?
Just that level of independence, it grows. It grows, and all of a sudden, this little baby that you once cared for is becoming a small adult and a young adult, and being able to trust them to make decisions and watch them kind of grow into their own self and who they're going to become it's a really fascinating ride.
Is there any way to prepare the teens for that transition?
Really allowing opportunities for that trust to grow. Giving them opportunities to demonstrate some of that independence while they're still kind of under our watchful eye. Whether that's more responsibilities in the home, later curfews, more opportunities for things that once upon a time we maybe would have said no to because we just didn't think they were ready for it. Looking for things for them to join and be a part of, being able to, whether it's a club, group, sports, activities of some kind, volunteering in the community, things like that give them a little bit more of that kind of real world experience and opportunity. But again, with parents still kind of in that background, monitoring, watching. One of my favorite things is asking high school age kids to make their own appointments for like the doctors and dentists and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Because as silly as it sounds, like they have to talk to people on the phone and be kind of sort of professional and scheduling, and I encourage them to do it with their parent so that they can have that backup. But yeah, being able to schedule your own dentist appointment.
Talking on the phone. Oh my goodness. We could have a whole conversation about why young people are afraid to physically talk on the phone these days. But that's interesting that that's a skill. To what extent should we push the involvement? Like if we notice that our teenagers getting to high school and not doing anything, when is that okay and is it not okay? And how hard do you push? Because some kids are shyer than others.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's important that people find their people. And sometimes you just don't know where to look. And so whether it's just kind of throwing out some suggestions. Hey, there's this thing going on. Would you like to go? Hey, I heard about this event happening downtown. Did you want to go? Offering it as an option is absolutely okay. I think we do run a risk of pushing too much, because also if it's mom or dad's idea, it's probably going to be lame. And so just kind of tossing it out there, because it may not be what they land on, but it might be something that generates that thinking skill of, well, I don't want to do that because it was mom or dad's idea, but what about this? And so then we also have to be open to whatever they kind of come up with, as long as it's safe to try out. I wouldn't be pushing too much, as long as they're filling their time with something. And it doesn't have to be a social event really either. I mean, if they spend time writing or drawing or doing art, taking pictures, walking through their community, bird watching, whatever it might be, as long as they're filling time with something that brings them joy and is safe.
Safe, that's a good one. What about the kids who are doing too much? And what do you watch for to know if your teen is doing too much? I mean, because I know I wanted to try everything, and there are kids like that, but at what point do you need to step in what's a sign you need to step in and say, okay, let's set some priorities here and decide what are the 3 things you most want to pursue as opposed to the 20 that you're trying to fit in?
Absolutely. Well, I would encourage having those conversations before the activities start to kind of set those guardrails of what is acceptable and what is not. You know, in some homes, the priority is going to be the academic piece, and we will allow you, it's okay if you do these 3, 5, 10, whatever things, and this is the expectation of where your grades need to be for that to continue. Because if you're trying to chase it after things have gotten sideways, it's a problem. That's harder to do versus setting the expectation on the front end so that everybody knows. Because different family systems prioritize and other things. So in this family system, this is what is important, and this is where you need to be able to have the privilege and opportunity to do the things you want to do. So I would encourage parents to kind of set that up on the front end. I would also look for, it's the same things. Our high schoolers are going to experience more stress than our younger kids, or they're going to experience it in a different way. And so watching for those really long nights and early mornings, making sure they're still getting enough sleep, making sure they're still taking care of themselves physically, eating, that they're not skipping meals or avoiding food, that kind of thing. Friendships and relationships might change. And that could happen at any stage of childhood, but especially in high school and middle school. So not being friends with kids they've been friends with their whole life is one thing, but are they forming relationships with others?
Okay.
Are
so
we replacing
sometimes it's a
them?
warning sign, sometimes it's not.
Correct. That's the funny thing about all of this stuff is sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It just depends on how it's impacting their functioning. Because if they're just not friends with this group of kids anymore because our likes and our tastes have evolved and now I'm friends with this group of kids, absolutely. That's to be expected in child development. If I'm not friends with this group anymore and I actually don't have any friends and I want some, but I don't know where to start or how to go about it, that's a concern. And something we'd need to step in on.
I was going to say, any suggestions for asking those questions? Because I imagine with all of this, trying to keep some communication open is key. But how do you ask those questions without off-putting, especially a teenager?
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's okay to embrace hey, I know you don't like talking about this stuff, and I'm going to keep asking because I care about you and I want to make sure you're okay. Asking them to invite their friends over sometimes, or to do stuff as a group, seeing if they can, whether they can invite their group of friends over or go do stuff out in the community where everybody's able to be so you can kind of see them interacting. That's always helpful if we get the opportunity to do that. But yeah, just asking the questions. Hey, I noticed you haven't been talking about so-and-so as much anymore. Are you guys still tight? Are you still friends? They might laugh at us, they might scoff at us, but it opens the door for that conversation. And I think that's the best thing parents can do is keep knocking. Keep knocking on the door, keep letting them know that you're there and that you care about them and that you want them to be successful. And then they'll bring stuff to us in hopes when they're ready and can talk about it.
I love that sentiment. For parents, how much do we need to give ourselves some grace, the adults who might be in the picture, to realize that this is a transition for us as well?
Absolutely. I think everything's important, and parents set the tone. We set the tone for how things go, and if we are upset or nervous or anxious, then whether we try to hide that or not, they're gonna feel it. And we need to just stay open and receptive to whatever they're able to bring us. And we have to give ourselves a ton of grace as well, because this is our first time parenting this kid, and all kids are different. So we have to navigate it alongside them as they're growing up.
Oh, that's something so key to keep in mind. All of their kids are different. All of us are different. How much caution do we need to make sure that we're exercising in not letting our anxieties be imparted onto the kids?
I think it's bound to happen sometimes because we care so much about our kids. We love our kids and we want them to be successful. And we've lived our lives a certain way. We've seen things, we know things. And so we're always trying to like protect them from those sand traps that we know are going to come if they keep going this direction. And we got to let them walk through it sometimes, because if they don't have an opportunity to feel what that feels like and recover on their own, then they won't know how to do that as an adult. And we can't always plan to save them from everything. So being able to set up the guardrails and trust ourselves as parents that we did everything we could to try to set them up for success, and knowing that we've kept that door open for them to continue to come back and talk with us should things go sideways, is a key piece to this. And I think that we should, it's going to sound really wild, but we should value if things don't go well and they come talk to us about it versus jump straight to punishment. And I say that because if they come and tell you about something that didn't go well, that means they're trusting us to do what we said we were going to do, which was help them navigate this life. And we really have to decide, like, is this worth providing some very punitive reaction or response versus, okay, like, I can help you navigate this. We're in a tricky space, but I can help you navigate it, and honoring the fact that they brought it to us. It's just a different way of thinking about it versus jumping straight to what we sometimes feel the need to do, which is provide a consequence.
Getting angry.
That's right. That's
Especially
right.
true when we talk about the teenagers. We were also talking about this whole letting go piece and our anxieties in terms of the one big change in Kansas schools, and a lot of schools are going through this fall, is the bell-to-bell cell phone ban.
Yes.
And the parents having the debate on social media. Our kids can read all of this, right? And
Yes.
and I know it's controversial and everybody has an opinion, but when the adults are out there saying, well, I need my child to be in contact with me. What if they need to call me during the day? Here's the whole letting go part of it. What if there's a school shooting and they need to call? I know that's the reality sometimes of our society in some locations. My own nephew went through it at their school where his mom is a teacher, so she was going through it at the same time. This happened in Wisconsin a few years ago. But those anxieties, now suddenly our kids are reading this debate going, yeah, what if a shooter comes into my school? Or what if I do need to call my mom because I'm having a rough day?
Yeah.
Well, in one, yes, is a very serious thing and we can debate that. But in the other hand, if they're having a rough day and they need to call their mom,
You still can.
they can go to the office and do
They
it.
absolutely can. Yes.
Do we need that 24/7 contact, or is that kind of the
I think
the crux of this whole letting go transitional part?
It's definitely a piece of it. We have gotten used to it, and we like it because it feels normal now.
Right.
And it's hard to remember that once upon a time that wasn't a thing, and it was okay. Now the world was different then. Things like school shootings and stuff like that was not as prevalent back before the age of kids having their cell phones in the schools. And on one hand, if someone's having a rough day and they're just kind of out of sorts, there is still the way to contact parents. They just got to go to the office and use a phone in there. It's not the same. It's not as easy, and it's an adjustment that everyone's going to have to make to be able to follow the law as it's been passed in the state. So parents can help their kids adjust to that by developing a plan. If there is I talk a lot about code words between kids and parents because maybe you're embarrassed or you're worried about who might be listening, or you don't want to have to say whatever the vulnerable thing is that you might have to say if you're in the office at the school or at a party or somewhere. So developing a code word or a code phrase that is less vulnerable and seems more kind of simple, but your parent knows what that means, and that means I'm not okay and I need you. They can still respond in the way that they need to. So it's just an alternative safety plan that can help both parties feel more secure and safe around things.
I really like that piece of advice of having a plan and talking it through before the school year starts. If you are the type of parent or teenager who feels like, well, I just need to be able to reach out to mom or dad during the day to feel better, I like that piece of advice. Have a plan for what you're going to do instead,
Yeah.
now that that's not an option. So many things that we touched on today. If there was one big piece you wanted people to remember, what is your one key takeaway?
As our kids go to school, doing what we can to align ourselves with the school and be a partner with them. Being able to know who your kids' teachers are, know who the front desk staff are, and working together, like being on the same team. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want our kids to have an opportunity to learn and grow and be successful in the school setting. And if we work alongside our school staff to do that, it tends to go better. And developing those relationships earlier versus later, because it just helps us head off things that don't have to grow into big conflicts. Now, not everybody has success with that, and that's okay, and you won't know till you try. So I would say parents and schools coming together to be on the same page and supporting the kid is huge.
Absolutely. Jennie Watson with Astra Mental Health and Recovery. Thank you. It's a
Absolutely.
big time with a lot of big things happening and a lot of big feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we say. And no matter what those feelings are, no matter what your age, parent and adult and child alike, we hear you. We see you.